What's up, everybody? This is your host, the professor of the Genius Generation podcast, and I'm sitting here with
Soul gravy, man.
and the engineer extraordinaire,
Fran Lover,
Fran Lover, the man.
the man.
That's right. What's happening, Saul?
Not a lot, man. How you doing this morning?
Good, man. Good,
Fine,
good.
fine, fine.
You drove halfway across the planet again to get here. I appreciate that.
That's right. It's because I enjoy it. No, I'm selfish.
Yeah, yeah. We got a special show today, man. Like we were talking the other day, we said artists usually have their whole lives to write and conceptualize their whole first album.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I've been waiting my whole life for this one episode to be able to sit here and tell this story. And that's why I'm sitting here with a smile on my face right now.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And you know what the subject matter is. Does a subconscious bias still exist in hip hop?
Deeper than sea fish in the ocean.
Say that again.
Deeper than sea fish in the ocean. It's an Outcast lyric.
I guess.
Deeper than deep dish hammers and bows.
Deeper than Atlantis.
Yeah, that's
You know
right.
what I'm saying? And we're gonna get business out of the way first. Let me throw it out there. You can reach me on Instagram at the Professor 73 and at the Genius Generation Podcast. I went and purchased some. I like supporting entrepreneurs. 'Cause,
Mm-hmm.
I'm an entrepreneur myself. You are too. But I like supporting independent business people. So I bought beauty products. It has skin that all natural skin and hair products. I got some oil, some lavender oil for my wife. She loves it. It ran out of it. Time to get some more. And y'all need to check out Noble Products for you. And it's not just for ladies either, for dudes. You like your woman feeling soft, smelling good. Man, it's
I like the name off the rip.
yeah, Noble.
Mm-hmm.
Noble Products for you. So check out nobleproductsforyou.com. She got some dope stuff, man. Check that out. And man, chock full of information today. You know what I'm
Lots of
saying?
it.
But I want to send a shout out to somebody that I know and you know as well as my boy Julian.
Oh yeah.
He saw me the other day, man, and it made me feel good, and it showed me the basis for starting something like this.
Mm-hmm.
My man, when I walked in the door, my man had a smile on his face, man, and he said, I ain't never seen him like that, but he said, man, y'all boys did it last weekend, man.
What's up, Jay?
Y'all boys did it. And he got to talking about, y'all talking about Ice Cube. He started rhyming like boom, 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 going. He said, man, y'all boys brought back memories. That's exactly what I was going for. The way I feel when I think about certain stuff, I want to stoke that in other people who I don't want them to forget what this art form, where it came from. We can't forget about the people in the past.
That's right.
So I thought that was pretty dope. So shout out to Julian. All right, man. Now, you want to do some history?
Yeah.
It's the end of March. We're going to start with March 26, 1995. And it was a sad day because I remember the day very vividly, but it was a sad day, but it was the passing of West Coast hip-hop pioneer, Eazy-E.
Easy.
And
Yeah, right.
I'm writing a book for Daddy-O, the memoir.
Mm-hmm.
So y'all check that out. It'll be out later this year, hopefully. Well, not hopefully, it will be.
Yeah.
And that's Made in Brooklyn, a memoir of Beat Streets and Life by Daddy-O, hip-hop icon.
Yeah, he knew Eric, right? Matter of fact, he said he was a stand-up dude.
Stand-up dude in
Stand-up
our
dude.
conversation, and he said it in one of the songs. So
That's
shout
right.
out to Daddy-O. That man is golden right there. You know what I'm saying? All right, March 26, 1995. Man, the way the first time I ever heard Eazy-E, going through one of my stories, I was in the 10th grade, lived in New Orleans. I was walking down the street in the 7th Ward. I just got robbed like a week or two before. But I was still walking down the street. I had my Sony Walkman, had the headphones on,
Mm-hmm.
and my partners borrowed a car from his auntie or somewhere, and I didn't know they were coming. I was walking down the street with headphones, listening to Public Enemy. It takes a nation of millions to hold us back. This is 1988. Walking down the street, and I'm walking down the street, and they pull up next to me in a car, and it just so happened, I took the headphones off.
Mm-hmm.
They told me, get in the car. We'll get you a ride the rest of the way to school. And when I got in, man, they put the tape in. Listen to this. Woke up quick at about noon. Just thought that I had to be in Compton soon. I got to get drunk before my day begins, before my mother starts bitching about my friends. And I'm like, what?
What is this?
He can't talk about his mother like that. What is this? But I was hooked right there, man. He had that charisma, that voice.
Mm-hmm.
And with Dre on production, it was the bomb, bro. It was something new, and it started something new. And to tie into what we said last week, to go back with the Ice Cube thing, it all ties into one, man. And that was the beginning of something. It was something great, and that was a sad day when he passed, and I'll never forget it because I saw it. A lot of people don't know, but BET actually used to have the BET News at 6 o'clock, and I remember they reporting it on there. People don't remember BET had their own news that actually reported what went down, and not it wasn't all celebrity driven news. It was actual news where you could get something from. But it was BET had a news, and it was March 26, 1995.
When I think of Easy, I think of you probably know who I think of. I straight think of Bone Thugs.
Yeah.
Crazy, Lazy, Busy, Wish
Yeah.
and Flesh.
Yeah. You're a big fan of Bone. Yeah.
I remember specifically, like, I found this. It wasn't something I found anywhere else, but if you look on the cover of East 1999,
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's Easy sitting up in a window, and I'm sure I could Google it pretty quickly, but I'm just saying, there's Easy looking down on them, and they're standing at the corner of St. Clair and East 1999.
Yeah.
So I think that,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Exactly.
that's a pretty cool story, too, like how Crazy got a call, and he would bug him to death, finally got an opportunity to, collaborate with him, and then they were freestyling over the phone.
Over the phone.
And I'm sure a lot of people did that back then before there were other mediums to communicate.
And I think I've heard the story a couple of times. I don't know how true it is, but over the years, they were from Cleveland and they got on the Greyhound and rode out to the West Coast. But coincidentally, while they rode out to the West Coast, they missed Easy because he was in Cleveland.
That's
You know
right.
what I'm saying?
That's right. I've heard that too.
That sounds like something would have happened to me, man. Always a day late and a dollar short. You know
That's
what I'm
right.
saying?
That's right.
All right. Also, March 26th, 1995. So this was the same day.
year. On the same day.
Big L releases his debut album, Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, on Columbia. Produced mainly by his DITC crew of Buck Wild, Lord Finesse, and Showbiz, the debut from the Harlem street legend showcases his lyrical mastery, cracking the Billboard 200 and reaching number 22 on the R&B chart. This East Coast classic spawned fan favorites including No Ends, No Skins, Street Struck, and The Graveyard, which featured both a young Cameron, credited as Killer Cam, and Jay-Z. That was a dope. I had the album. I had the tape. I had to go by the store and buy the tape. Yeah, Big L was a pretty dope MC and a very underrated crew. The DITC crew, very dope. I think what happened with, that debut album, Columbia also had Nas. So you had two very skilled MCs, solo artists. You got to make a choice. Who are we gonna promote? Who we gonna put the budget behind? Who put the money behind? But I know after that, after he left Columbia, Big L kept putting out some dope fire shit, man. What else we got? March 26th. How about this? March 28th, 504 Boys released the single Wobble Wobble on No Limit Records. Wobble Wobble, the lead single of the band's inaugural studio debut, Goodfellas, was produced by Carlos Stevens, the in-house producer for the new No Limit Records. And but I'm sure it was post Beats by the Pound after they had split. But I still bang this in the car. Wobble Wobble. You hear the
Shake,
Trigger
shake
Man.
it.
You hear the Trigger Man breaking and everything. They snuck that bounce element in there, man. It's still bang hard to this day. My favorite verse on there is C Murder. I don't know why that C Murder verse on there. And on the video, he was doing that gangster walk with no shirt on. So let's say, gotta show love out for that. That was March 28th.
Shake it.
March 26th.
PC Silk Magic.
March 30th. Let's go March 30th. 1999. BG releases the single Bling Bling on Cash Money. Yeah, you could do that again. Yeah. The teenage New Orleans rapper's debut single from his platinum-selling Chopper City featured Cash Money label, Mates Big Timers and Hot Boys, and beats by Manny Fresh. Manny Fresh. Fresh band. Nobody got drums like Fresh. Man, I don't have my reading glasses either.
BG's Soul Top 40 pop hit, peaking at number 36 of the Billboard Hot 100 and number 14 on the R&B hip hop chart, featured a 17-year-old Lil Wayne, and introduced the term everybody knows now.
Bling Bling.
Bling bling, that's right.
It's American pop culture. So,
talk about impactful, man.
Imagine if they would have trademarked Bling Bling.
You're right.
You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
Yeah, BG, in my opinion, as far as the South is concerned, one of the top. That's the heart of the streets right there, bro. BG was that man. That was March 30th, 1999. And where's my March 31st? I got one on March 31st right here. This was '98, I guess.
Oh man.
Yeah, this is a doozy right here.
Mm-hmm.
Gangstar released their 5th album, Moment of Truth, on New Tribe Virgin, I guess. Debuting at #1 on the R&B chart and reaching the Billboard 200. The long-awaited follow-up to Hard to Earn was the group's most successful to date. Man, the gold-selling jazzy 20-track set. You Know My Steez was the first single off of that.
Style with Ease.
Yeah, man, that was a dope album. What's your favorite track off of that, Moment of Truth?
You Know My Steez?
You Know My Steez? Yeah.
I was gonna say,
I
the
take-
only one I would even be introduced to, at this point in time without being totally invested in would be,
Yeah.
You Know My Steez.
You Know My Steez was dope. Above the Clouds, featuring Inspector Deck. I think that's like a street favorite right there. And then you had the one with KC and JoJo. What was that one? What was that one? I didn't even write that one down. I think that was the second single. Royalty was super dope. And you know how I am about singing in my hip hop records. That was singing, but it came from a totally different perspective, man. It was so dope, man. Royalty. Check that out on your way home today.
Singing can mix like flour and water,
Yeah.
to make slow dough. I'm just playing.
you and your references, right? Yeah. That was your history lesson for today, for the end of March. These different years going back to in the late 90s, the last week in March. So once again, this is your professor, and this topic for the day is: does a subconscious bias still exist in hip hop? Before we jump into that topic, because it's so heavy and it's so subconscious, you know what I'm saying? I think we were talking yesterday, and what I told you was, how could, if you're going to be judgmental about somebody's art, your art is inspired from the culture you came around, you grew up around, or whatever. And in reference to this, how could I judge somebody else's art negatively if I don't even understand their culture?
That's right.
I would accept it and get into it to see where it, why is it they painted this picture like this? Why did they write this song like that? Before I do that. So regional, I think the culture regional, when hip hop and rap was regional, I liked it, man, because I like learning through the music. I learned what Bompton was. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know nothing about South Central LA, but through the music, I learned about the different streets. I heard about different sets. I learned about what they do on the West Coast. I learned about the 5 boroughs in New York. But you know what I'm saying?
But you never lived there.
Never lived there.
That's right.
But I knew about it. Man, it's
deep stuff.
It's deep stuff, yeah.
Deep stuff.
And I think I'm to this day I'm open to it, man. I still listen to everything, and I can accept it for what it is. But it's hard now for me to mix it. If I'm listening to something, I'm stuck on it for months.
Well, you get in that mindset of because there's vernacular jargon, certain sets of words, slang that you're not going to recognize from just like anywhere in the world, from L.A. to, even Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, New York, all everywhere is going to have their different words to express certain things. So,
right.
So like when you invest yourself in this culture over here, or where it was coming from, you really got to invest yourself a lot to really try to get everything out of it from what they're saying.
Right. And I'm gonna start with this. One of my favorite quotables all time, hip hop history. You know what you need to learn. Old school artists don't always burn. You're just another rapper who's had his turn. Now it's my turn, and I am concerned about idiots posing as kings. What do you say? What are we here to rule? Thought we supposed to sing, and if we ought to sing, then let us begin to teach. Many of you are educated. Open your mouth and speak. He's talking about the power in this right here, this microphone. If you have this microphone in front of you, you have the responsibility. You have the power, the responsibility to teach. You know what I'm saying?
Knowledge.
Not acting like idiots. You a king. Get on this microphone and teach people something. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I like. I like it. I like sitting here in front of this microphone because I get people who ask me questions, and I never claim to know everything, but I can teach you something through my own personal experiences and that I've held on to. So, and with that being said, I can teach not the whole history of the South, but I can tell you what I know because through my reality, because it's what I live.
What was your reality? A lot of it, huh?
Man, it goes
deep. I'm telling you, those conversations that we have, I know that it goes really deep. Your mind is like
What you say the other day? You said I got the mind of an elephant.
You got the brain of an
Don't
elephant. You remember the smallest details. It's impressive. That means you have passion for it. So big ups.
Yeah. Man, maybe I could just be a freak of nature because I remember stuff being just a little tight, man. You know what I'm saying? And I guess before I go any further with this show, if anybody wanted to know what kind of, people always want to check your credentials, where you're from, and I think we should get into that before we even go into the subconscious. If the subconscious bias still exists against the South, let's talk about the story of the South from my perspective.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. So let's go into my credentials.
Yeah,
you know
where do you think you got the most impact from? Was it Lake Charles, Lafayette? Was it,
Well, it was definitely New Orleans, because that's I spent my teenage years there. You pick up you get your friends that you usually make for life come from that place. And but I'm gonna start off with if you know about the South, Interstate 10 run from L.A. to Jacksonville, coming through the Gulf Coast. My whole early life was between Houston and New Orleans. Each stop in between on I-10. You know what I'm saying? I went back and forth, man. I spent so much time on I-10. It's ridiculous. And you know what I'm saying? My first address as a kid was 2626 Moreland Street in Lake Charles, Louisiana. That's on the north side of Lake Charles. It's what's called Gosport. Gosport is rough as hell. I don't know like now, but I know when I came up, late 70s, early 80s, we seen some shit. Gosport was rough. It was rough as hell. It was, I guess, I don't know if people still consider it a hood, but I know I seen some shit. It wasn't hood to us then.
It was what it was.
It was what it was. It was growing up. It was normal. Whatever you seen was normal. So, as a matter of fact, my backyard, I was just telling my brother, asking my brother if he remembered this. In our backyard, we had a fence. We could sit on the fence, turn around with our backs to the yard. You could sit on the fence, and it was a Howard Johnson parking lot hotel, right like 50 yards away. We on the interstate. It's I-10. You know what I'm saying? I-10 flowing through my blood. Everywhere I live was I-10, man. Always back and forth. I-10. And, it was a lot of movement on I-10. I-10 was hot. Became hot in the 90s. You know what for.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Peddling dope.
Yeah. You have to be so graphic, man.
I'm sorry, dog. It's like my 20, my I-20.
Man, and it was just that I-10. That I-10 was in my blood, Lake Charles, and it was a rough place, rough upbringing, and I moved from there. But let me go back to being in Lake Charles, and I guess it goes with what I am now. Why I remember so much, and why I read so much, and I maintain so much information. My grandmother, and this just hit me the other day. After we moved away from Lake Charles, about an hour away, we moved to Lafayette. My grandmother knew, I was into sports, I was this and that. She would send me stuff. She would just mail me newspaper articles. And I love her to this day for doing that because she knew I read a lot, newspaper articles, and I read it, and that had a lot to do with it. And also, and my dad, growing up, man, he made sure we read a lot, especially like on Sundays while he's reading the Sunday paper, and we trying to watch football or we trying to do something, and he used to always like, here, read this, and Dad, come on. Boy, you better read this shit. He used to really, man, boy, you better read this shit. And it would be like we talked about last week. You think it's useless information, but later on in life, the stuff that you read, it was educating you about stuff. I was never the smartest kid. Hell, I wasn't that good in school. I wasn't that good at school at all. But on the sidebar of that, like a little later in life, even when I was in my early 20s, and I lived at my parents' house in the basement, I had my own private interests or whatever. So I'm down there by myself. Putting something in the air, whatever, and I go in the house and I'm reading I'm reading I had 2 sets of encyclopedias in the basement, so I was reading. I'll just go grab encyclopedias, bro, and you know what I'm saying, just randomly, just pick something out and just read about it. And
that's a good example of not letting school get in the way of your education.
Exactly. I love that quote. Yeah.
Don't let school get in the way of your education.
Yeah, and that was my experience at home, man, and I love Lake Charles because everything that I am is everything within me. And because we moved, Lafayette was only an hour away. You're always going back home to Lake Charles for holidays or whatever and visiting. So Lake Charles was never that far. We were never that far removed from our beginnings, our home. But in Lafayette is where I started having my first experiences with hip hop. Like I told you about the skating rink, that was early '80s or whatever. And I attended my first concert living in Lafayette at the Cajun Dome, and it was, it was supposed to be. That's when the show was out with Dougie Fresh and Slick Rick. They were supposed to be there, but they didn't show up. UTFO was there, and it was some local cats with Jerry curls. I don't remember the name, but they had Jerry curls and they were with UTFO. But you need to check out UTFO. They had, man, UTFO was nice. UTFO was real nice. And DJ Mixmaster Ice, check him out. Check out UTFO. Untouchable Force Organization. That's the name. Kango Kid, Educated Rapper, Dr. Ice, and Mixmaster Ice. So that was my experiences in Lafayette, my early experiences with hip hop right there. And or even early in life, the musical influences, like I told you before, I listened to, like, my dad had records and stuff like that. But we have, in my family, I've heard, we have, coming from that part of Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana, is a Creole culture. I have a French last name. My last name is Rito, coming from that side of South Louisiana. And you move a little further east, is Lafayette. They have a little more, you get more Cajun culture over there. But in my family, there's Zydeco, on that side of Louisiana, we listen to Zydeco. So a little later, you had your hip hop and you had Zydeco also. And I was into that,
Push them together.
Rockin' Sydney, I've heard he won a Grammy. He had the song Don't Mess With My Tutu in the 80s. I heard we were related to him, and there was a Step Rito, artist named Step Rito, that I was related to, and also an influential Rap-A-Lot artist I just found out 2 years ago. I never knew I was related to Mr. 3-2, who was all over the Riding Dirty, UGK Riding Dirty album. You know what I'm saying? I found out 2 years ago. I went to a family reunion, and they had a monument, all the people in the family that passed away between the 2-year reunions, and his name and his picture and everything was up there.
Don't you know that's your cousin?
I guess I know now. You know what I'm saying? Rest in peace. That was my experiences in Lafayette. You got anything?
Not particularly, but I do wonder.
Oh, you just gonna listen?
Yeah. I really enjoy listening because this is obviously something you're passionate about, and it's 100%. It's real. So I like listening to things that are real, especially if I can suck it up and gain something from it, because I also think it's important to be able to identify things that are real. In your life, it's hard to tell, what's real and what's fake, and your perspective is real. Your perception is your reality. So, all these things that you talk about, your experiences from, Lake Charles, like I didn't know about the Golden Triangle.
The Golden Triangle.
Told me about that because we're both fans of UGK, right?
Yeah.
And you things you tell me that I hear,
Yeah.
Now I go back. I'm like, oh, this is what he actually meant.
Yeah.
I would have never known that if you wouldn't have picked up on it. I wouldn't have figured out, about Beaumont, Orange,
And Port Arthur.
Yeah, Port Arthur.
And then a little further west, you got Houston over there.
Yeah, and Lake Charles is really close to there.
Yeah.
Well, I say close. I mean, it's what 40,
not even
40 minutes. Something like that.
Yeah.
So like you were able to go back and forth. Like when you were in Lake Charles, I'm sure you had chances to go over there, and make yourself or find out influence from inside that triangle, right?
Of course, man. I have family from, like I said, all over, man. Our earliest family reunions was in Beaumont, going back to 1980. So we were going back to Beaumont, and then they moved over to Houston, and I mean they still continuing to this day. It was supposed to be this year, but man, I moved around, man. Between those, I lived in 4 cities, my whole life. We didn't move around a lot. It's just that we lived in 4 different cities, but we didn't move around a lot. And I think, so whenever we didn't have the luxury of growing up around family and cousins or whatever, and you get everybody, you in certain places a family might be deep, so you don't mess with that person right there. We didn't have that, so when it was time to scrap with somebody, we had to scrap. We couldn't go get our big, you know what I'm saying? It was just me and my brother, my older brother, and my younger brother was a little younger. But we had to scrap in these cities. We didn't have the luxury of having family around us.
Where was your favorite place to live out of those? Or you said New Orleans gives you the most memories, but was it your favorite?
No, I don't think New Orleans gives me the most memories. Man, I love Lake Charles because that's my beginning, man. I love it. But I think my as far as memories are concerned, New Orleans, because it has a special place to me. I became like the story I told about Easy E earlier. The same people that was in that car that picked me up, I'm friends, we brothers to this day. You know what I'm saying? And I think that bond in hip hop, that's what it did. And after that, I wanted to be too short. He was too clean. We were the Dangerous Crew. That's how we learned how to talk to girls. We listened to Too Short, but Born the Mac album to this day. To this day. He asked me about my son to this day. And when, hey, send him this white tape, the Born the Mac tape. He hollering at the girl, telling him he need to listen to Born the, stuff like that, man. We bonded through stuff like that. But New Orleans is a special place to me because of that. The friends that I made, the experiences, and I said this on an earlier show before you had joined me. When I used to go to New Orleans at the age of 13. I lived in Lafayette, and my dad moved before we did, because he got transferred, and it's only 2 hours away. And we used to go see him his company put him up in the suite, whatever. So we would go see him on the weekends, and I was 13 at the time. And we're up in the hotel with him downtown. I had to get out. I would get out and walk the streets downtown, and I don't think it's like that anymore. When you walk, man, you hear music everywhere. You smell food. You walking down the street. You smell food cooking, and you hear just music, loud music while you walking in the business district.
Brass everywhere, right?
Man, I'm telling you, and that it might not affect everybody like that, but it affected me, and that got in me, and to this day it's still in me. And New Orleans is a place that it ain't for everybody, but if you embrace it, it embraces you. And I think a lot of people embrace me from there because I embraced it. And that's evidence of the documentary that I did, man. People showed me a lot of love.
That was good content, man.
Thank you. We Are One Street Music of New Orleans. You can check it out on YouTube. And I talk about the history of New Orleans hip hop and bounce music, the real bounce music down there. You know what I'm saying? With man,
The originators,
T.T. Tucker, DJ Herb. You know what I'm saying? Ghost Town. Man, shout out to Devious. Man, DJ Jimmy. Juvie was around then. And, you know what I'm saying? It could go on and on, man. I got a special place in my heart for that city. Man.
What were you listening to in New Orleans? What was local? The things that you heard?
At that time, it was still the 80s. It was still 86, 80s. I lived in New Orleans between the age of 13 and I was almost 18. So hip-hop was bubbling. You probably had some local artists at the time who were bubbling. You had one that was most notable to me. We had Gregory D and Manny Fresh, Project Rap, Buck Jump Town. They had a song called It Ain't Where You From, It's Where You At. Talked about all the hoods in there. This was 88, man. And to us, they were larger than life because it's local and you're hearing them on record. They got a record deal. And a shout out to Ice Mike, one of the best producers ever. He was in my documentary also. Ice Mike always came with the heat. Well, Manny Fresh was there. Man, Gregory D and Manny. Just that song, man, that showed me it was the beginning of something that somebody local could make a record. I wasn't rapping yet, but it started building something up inside of me. And I think that was maybe a year later when that influential album from the South by the Ghetto Boys, Grip It on That Other Level came out. And I think that started it all, man. It let us all know we could do something. Ghetto Boys had an album previously to that, Making Trouble, but it was Grip It on That Other Level. That influential sound came from Reddy Red. And rest in peace to Reddy Red. He doesn't get enough credit for what he did for the South. Laying the musical framework for what became the Ghetto Boys and crafting that sound. And it was the perfect combination of MCs and the perfect time. And the mastermind of Lil J Prince. It was the perfect time, man. It was the perfect time, and we were young, and it just captured our imagination. And the kind of stuff they were talking about in the music, and I think that's what it was. It was taboo, it was dirty, it was explicit, and I think that's what drew us to it. And I think if you saw the documentary when Willie D was mentioning why they weren't liked in New York. In the beginning, because he said people just didn't like us because what we talked about. We had the freedom to just talk about what we talked about, and I think the difference is I thought about this yesterday. The difference is, and I think in New York they had, when you think about the elements of hip hop, a lot of people consider that knowledge itself. A lot in New York they spoke about what they knew, and to let people know what they knew, you had to sound like it was all not sound like it's complex, but a lot of dudes they were real smart, and the lyrics
massive vocabulary.
yeah, and the
complicated
lyrics
and
reflected. The
things like
lyrics
that.
really reflected it. It was dope, and I think the difference was in the South, it wasn't that because we didn't have that knowledge.
Well, that
So,
type of knowledge.
that type of
I was
knowledge.
going to say because
Yeah.
your knowledge is going to
Give
be
me for that,
based
yeah.
on what you know and what you learn from where you grew up or whatever information you retain.
Right.
The people that are influential around you.
Right.
What was it? People when they talk about lyricism in the South, and the South probably didn't get a whole lot of credit for things like lyrics.
Yeah.
But Southern rap, Southern hip hop, they do things like cut off words, get lazy with their tongue.
Yeah.
Just because they're slower and they have a different means of communicating something doesn't mean you're not intelligent.
Right.
So you can use less words and get across the same idea,
Same idea.
and it's equally as powerful.
Right.
That
Right.
in itself, when you incorporate knowledge and you can use less words, you are already giving credit to the listener that they are slightly elevated, or they are, they know about the culture a little bit. You don't have to go into so much depth. You can use 10 words instead of 100.
Yeah.
And because your listener is invested, they've already got it.
Exactly. And the major another difference is, and like I spoke a second ago, in New York, the lyrics were more complex, and they said it a different way, but what they were talking about, it could have been the same message. In the South, they was talking that street shit.
Mm-hmm.
In 1992, there was a group called Ruthless Juveniles out of the New Orleans area in the West Bank, and I think that's what opened me up to finally realize it was something different coming out. And let me tell you about that. I was down here. I went up to New Jersey with my brother, lived with him for like 10 months. And then I came back down here. Then he and his wife went to New Orleans to visit home. He came back with Ruthless Juveniles tape. And I had never heard, I'm talking about before Mobb Deep. Maybe this is like 91, 92. Like, it was
Almost the same time.
And when I looked, yeah, damn, now that I think about it, damn. Parallel to it. That Blood Talk, the shit was violent, murderous, on point, but they had some bounce elements in it because it was from New York. And I was like, damn, it let me know it was something else different coming from the South that I didn't know about because I was listening to mostly East Coast hip hop at that time. And that showed me it was something different coming out. But Ruthless Juveniles,
different but the same?
Different but the same. In my mind, it wasn't, I could listen to it. I couldn't put one down and say one was, I was like, it's just what I from day to day. If I might listen, I might like listening to this today. Tomorrow I'll listen to that. You know what I'm saying? But it was just different. And I think, like we were saying yesterday, we didn't have in the South, we didn't have the corporate offices to write checks. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have the executive producers. You didn't have this. You didn't have that. So a lot of artists, rappers in the South,
they were all that.
Their first finances came from street money, to put out that first single to get the streets hot. Their first first finance came from the streets. So that's why a lot of rappers in the South talked about moving weight. Said, get it straight. You know what I'm saying? But, I think once I got to New Orleans, I never claimed to be some gangster type dude or nothing like that. But I ran with people. Cause everywhere I lived, I was like I had middle child. I was a weirdo, so I would just get on the city bus and just ride and get off and walk. That's how I learned. I lived in Fort City, so that's how I learned. I would just ride the bus and walk and learn. And I went to a school, the two high schools I went to in New Orleans. I went to St. Aug, which is right there in the middle of the city. And that's around the area where I got robbed at in 10th grade. And I went to John Ehret on the West Bank. But a lot of people I always went to school with people from other parts of the city. So I knew people from uptown. I knew people from downtown. Became friends with it, You
clicked with everybody.
I clicked with everybody.
I can see that.
I knew how to make the people who people consider gangsters. I made them laugh. I wasn't a comedian or nothing. I just was funny. I knew how to.
You was a clown.
I knew how to make beats. If somebody wanted to freestyle, I'm beating on something, making for beats. I knew how to. We made them laugh. I knew how to make them laugh. So if I see them out in the streets on the weekend somewhere, they dapping me up. I knew them. I knew everybody. I knew people from all over, and I ran wild with some dudes, and man, I ain't gonna say I'm not.
Could have gotten in trouble, bro.
Yeah,
Could have gotten in a lot of trouble.
yeah. So that's why New Orleans is a special place for me, and that Southern hip hop, that stuff started being bred I think in the early '90s. It's something to be proud of, and my story continues on from there. But you got anything else?
Uh, what what was your if you were in '90, what were you listening to? What was in your tape deck?
1990.
1990,
Um,
right before uh, the pop off.
Summer 1990. Uh, Let me see. Public Enemy. At that time, everybody was listening to Public Enemy at that time. I had, like we talked about last time, I had Digital Underground. I'm trying to think if anybody was able to grip it on that other level. Ghetto Boys, we got to us in 1990. That spring. Other than that, I can't think because what
Yeah,
I moved away. I moved up to Atlanta at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and the people I was hanging around, my surroundings, people we were listening to mostly East Coast music. And the thing was, at that time, I had started getting a little detached from where I'm from down bottom, because I always hated long car rides,
Mm-hmm.
and I was 17. I always hated long car rides, so I didn't go back to Louisiana for like 5 years, between 91 and 96, and I just hated car rides. So I got a little detached, but 96, I decided to go home, and the shit was different because people that I knew when you were kids, you teenagers or whatever, you were kids. When you go back 5 years later, they grown now. You grown now, and them dudes you saw when you were kids, shoot, they making money now, whether it be on the streets or whatever. And I went home for a family reunion in the summer of '96, and she had stepped out the car, and just like summer Louisiana, it was 97 degrees. It was hot. It was a hot summer. Man, it was hot, bro. It was hot. It was violent. That little short period of time I went home, I got to see something different. And that the experience that I went through that time, it really showed me this is you. This is where you from. And at that time, the music had started to change because after a few years now of this street music, that street shit that was out, it seemed like now shit, the South had a soundtrack to go by. So all this dope that was getting moved, all these that were financing these recording, these singles or whatever, and this music coming out, they had a soundtrack of the streets, it seemed like, from the South now. So it was bubbling. And when I got down there, I was hearing it. And that summer of '96 was very instrumental in what we see today. Because the summer of '96, you could be in Atlanta. In 1995, '96, you had Dungeon Family, Outkast was doing their thing, making dope shit. But other than that, you might, every once in a while, you would see a local artist with Atlanta had their own style of bass that was different from Miami. But it was bass. You'll see an artist here and there with a local hit, and it would go away. But you had Dungeon Family who was here making the dope stuff.
Yeah, Hitman, Sammy Sam, Big Oak Records.
Yeah, Raheem the Dream, you know what I'm saying? And after that, once Greg Street, I think Greg Street got to get his credit for what he did. And what he did, he brought that Gulf Coast sound, that dope sound, that gangster funk sound, because you had the Atlanta funk with the Dungeon Family,
Gangsta funk.
And he melted that mixed with that Gulf Coast funk, and you had the Memphis stuff with 8 Ball and MJG bubbling. Greg Street brought all that here, and finally you could listen to a top 8 at 8, where you had nothing but stuff from the South. You could listen to a straight out. Before that, you didn't have that. You had like going back to like '91, DOS Effects, who Day One Effects. That reached #1. It was sounded different. Then it would go away, and you wouldn't hear there was nothing sustaining with rap, because the only station we had in Atlanta was V103. That was the only urban station that played that rap. You had your college radio, like I said.
885.
And then 1995 was considered was Hot 107.9. It was Hot 97.
That's right.
When they first started.
That's right.
And 1995, they brought their first crew in. Their what was it called? They brought in their whole crew. Their night crew. They were called a Flip Squad. But they were all from New York. They played a lot of New York, and that was 1995. They played Bone Thugs and Harmony, but they played mostly East Coast stuff. And I think that's what maybe when Greg Street, V103 decided to bring in Greg Street, and it was a wrap. After that, man, you turn on, you hear the whole, Greg Street brought it all in. And he brought, I always remember this, September, I always remember it because it's the date, September 13th, 1996, the day that Tupac had passed. And me and my partner was it was a strip club in Decatur named Jazzy T's. and we was in Jazzy T's right after we got off work, and we didn't come out until it was midnight. It was dark. It was dark outside when we came out, and I never forget that night. And maybe my memory, I don't know why,
It was
but
the early morning.
my memories always tell me it was the same night. It could have been different, but my memory always tells me that was that same night, September 3rd, 96. We came out that club. We went in, it was daytime. It was daytime.
Jeez.
Not daytime, but it was
I
still
get- I
light
get- I get it was
outside,
light
you know?
outside, yeah.
And when we came out, it was midnight. But I remember coming out of Jazzy T's, and right next to Jazzy T's was a club called a Gate, a concert hall club, and it was like hood. It was hood. It was called a Gate. And that night, we didn't know it, but when we came out the club, we seen shit in the parking lot, all kind of rides, man.
Parking lot pimping.
Parking lot pimping. I'm telling you, I seen a girl with a baby in a stroller at midnight getting off the bus coming to this club, coming to the Gate. And that night, it was Master P and UGK. They first broke in the Atlanta market. And my mind always telling me it was that same night. But I remember coming out and seeing them. It could have been different, but I think it was the same night. And that showed, man, it was something different. It was a whole other something different than what I was listening to. But how big, whatever they were listening to, it was big. Because I looked, and that was a representation of what was going on. That was the sound of the South right there. And Greg Street broke them in that market, and that was their first time coming to Atlanta. And it was UGK and Master P at the Gate. And you know, in that Pimp C book, there's mention of that night. So I'm thinking it was the same night. I'm thinking it was the same night. And then also that summer of '96, I remember driving down the street, and I heard Mystical, "Here I Go," for the first time.
What's happening?
And I
What's
remember
going on?
when I heard that, oh man, I knew it was about to be a project. Oh, man, it was hot that summer. I remember the music was dope. Everything was hot. The music was hot. The temperature was, the climate was hot. That was '96, and like a week later, I was watching Rap City on BET, man, and I saw Ice Cream Man. Because I never knew, I thought Master P was I used to see him in the Source magazine. He had the funny album cover.
Thought he was West Coast.
Yeah, I you know, he saw the funny album cover, The Ghetto's Trying to Kill Me. We used to laugh at it and everything. But when I saw Ice Cream Man, and I looked and I saw the video, and I knew immediately. I was like, damn, that's new. I knew exactly where he was driving and everything. I was like, shit, I didn't know he was from New Orleans, so I paid more attention. And that was '96, and it hadn't looked back since. You know what I'm saying? It's been on the ascension ever since for the South, man. And man,
I'm gonna go back and try to find out who that lady was on that cover.
Ghetto's
Trying to kill me. Yeah. I'm gonna find out who that lady is. I'm just curious.
Now, as far as the story, like if you want to go back to when I was in Lafayette, my teenage years, and I talk about my older brother a lot, I had my older brother and my cousin who was always giving us stuff, because for us, music came from the West, which means it was coming from Houston, coming towards us. So my cousin introduced. We were in New Orleans and he was in Lake Charles, so he was coming from Houston. He was getting this stuff. He had first one that had MC Hammer, Stetson Sonic. I remember him giving us Stetson Sonic back then. Eric B. and Rakim, he had it first. My cousin always had it. My brother had his little records. My brother in his crate, he had Audio 2. He came home Too Short, Born to Mac. He had all this stuff. DOC, he had this stuff too. But it was 1986, I remember my brother went to a teen club. It was in Lafayette. It was called a Planetarium. And he came home. He went to a teen club one night. And he came home the next day and told us about a group from Miami named Two Live Crew. And they had a song, Throw That D. You know what I'm saying? And he said, you won't believe the kind of stuff they were saying in the song and everything.
That's funny. You talk about it like a teen disco, right? And that's what Uncle Luke or Luke Skywalker opened up first, right? Like he had the Pac Teen Disco or whatnot.
Yeah, the Pac Jam.
Pac
Jam down.
Pac
That's
Jam.
right.
That's right. That's funny because that's about. I would assume that's pretty close to the exact same time.
Yeah. I guess so. 86.
Could you imagine being like 15 years old or 13, teen, whatever.
Yeah.
You're 13, I guess, and going in the club at I don't know, 8 o'clock at night, not leaving till 3 in the morning.
I know it.
You know, like
I know. Who does that? Yeah. Who does that?
Like, what are your parents saying? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where you been at?
This is the Genius Generation Podcast. I'm your host, the Professor, sitting with
Saul Gravy, man.
and the engineer extraordinaire, Fran Lover. And this is Does a Subconscious Bias Still Exist in Hip Hop? And we're going to get around to that, but I'm loving telling these stories right now. We have to lay the groundwork for what I experienced coming up in the South.
I feel like your credentials are pretty deep in it. I think when you look at the sum of I guess whatever you want to call it, your credentials is you've had a passion for it and you followed it intently for a really long time, man. So that, like, I can't keep shoes for that long. So for you to enjoy something for this long and invest yourself in it for this amount of time and retain the information that you do, is kind of a big deal. It shows a true passion. So, you know, if people need paper credentials and all that shit, man, bump those cats. You know why? Because you don't need that stuff. You know what you are. You've invested yourself for a long time, man. So
and I'm from Gosport, North Lake Charles. I'm certified.
Certified.
You know what I'm saying? I can always go home. I love Lake Charles, man. Matter of fact, Master P mentioned us in the song. New Orleans, Baton Rouge, how you do that there? Lafayette, Lake Charles, how you do that there? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Too. Now I spoke about this. I think I did a show back last summer with my man from New Orleans, Uptown Charlie V. What up, Charlie?
Charlie V.
It was called Down South B-Boy. God, I think to this day that's probably the top listened to show that I've done. If he ever comes to Atlanta, I gotta get Charlie. That's my man right there. When I did my documentary, I didn't know him he didn't know me from, you know, the saying, I don't know you from Adam. Didn't know me. We met on social media through somebody else on social media. He didn't know me from Adam, but he showed up at the venue where we did the filming at. And gave me, and I think he was the glue that held the documentary together through his history of down, because he's
through his love.
He worked at a record store, Odyssey Records in New Orleans. You know what I'm saying? And shout out to Charlie, man. Charlie did.
He did some pretty dope art shit too, right?
yeah. Charlie, that's the man right there. Now on that show I did with him, as far as credentials are concerned, we talked about going back to 1984. I started breakdancing. We had the house in the neighborhood in Lafayette. I had two brothers, so my brother had friends, so everybody wanted to come to our house. We used to go find cardboard, and we used to get busy. I'm talking, we used to get busy in 1984. That's how powerful hip-hop was. And coming from New York, it made its way all the way down to the bottom, to where we was trying to emulate what they would, you know what I'm saying? We didn't know the history of it then, but we were trying to emulate what
it was
they
a
were
feeling.
Feeling. We was pulling the cardboard in our front yard, and we was getting busy. That was 84. And I also had a guy that moved from New York, that moved to Lafayette. We were like 11 years old in the 6th grade. The guy was a Puerto Rican cat named Miguel. I think he was from Queens, but he taught me how to do graffiti. And I'm telling you, I went to my grandmother's house, visited my grandmother's house, and I tagged up on the back of her. She had a bedroom. In her bedroom, on the back of her door, one of the bedroom doors, I tagged up something of my interpretation of what the Bronx looked like, the skyline, because that's what he showed me how to do. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I knew how to do on the back of her door, and it stayed there from 84 until she passed away in 99, until they demolished the house.
Oh, wow.
It stayed on the back of the door. So you know what I'm saying? I did graffiti. I used to break. I started rapping in 1990. So I did 3 out of the 4 elements. I ain't want to mess with DJing. That's some special cats right there. Yeah, I call DJs and producers the alchemists of our culture. That's some mad scientists, some weirdos. I don't mean weird in a bad way. I mean
ultra unique.
Ultra unique, man. Them dudes, you gotta be a special dude to be a producer or a DJ. And I don't mean like these days you got a million dudes calling themselves producers. I'm not talking about that.
And then them real producers are probably saying they're just beat makers.
Yeah. When I say producers, I mean cats that know their stuff. I mean like my favorite producer all time, Pete Rock.
Pete Rock.
Just for the simple fact he did 2 of my favorite songs, The World Is Yours, and They Reminisce. You know what I'm saying? And that's 2 songs. Like I talk about how much hip hop means to me, it's just 2 songs that meant something in my life at a certain period of time. They Reminisce over you. That's when that was the hottest song in the country when I met my wife. So I remember that. The World Is Yours. I was going through a tough time. That song got me through some stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Positive vibe.
I sipped the Don P watching Gandhi till I'm charged. Sitting in my book around, you know, man. But it's Pete Rock. And you got the Premier, Large Professor, Eric Sermon. And you bring it down south. You got, man, N.O. Joe, Pimp.
N.O. Joe.
That's the man right there. Pimp C, Organized Noise, Beats by the Pound, you know, KLC, Moby Dick. You know what I'm saying? It's the West Coast, Battle Cat, DJ Pooh, Dr. Dre, DJ Quick. Oh, in the Bay Area. Man, come on, Casual from the Bay Area. You know what I'm saying? This is producers and DJs. Man, I have the utmost respect for them dudes. Because I tried it before. I used to sit in the studio. I sat in front of SP 1200, and it was like 1995, and didn't know what the hell I sat there, wasted my money in studio time. I thought I was gonna go in there and bang out some heat, and I sat in front of that piece. It intimidated the hell out of me. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I tried to be a producer. And you know, I had a DJ. I skipped over that part. My DJ. Let me tell you that. And I think it's something I take pride in because, you know, when a lot of cats say, I want to be a rapper, first thing they want to go do, I need to go find me a manager. I need to do this. I need to get in the studio and make a record. I stayed true to it. First thing I did, I looked for a DJ. Who does, you know what I'm saying?
Who does that now?
I didn't even think about making a record. Before I do anything, I had to go look for a DJ. And when I moved to Atlanta, I got introduced to it because at that time, everybody wasn't rapping. So if you were a rapper at that time, people treated you a certain way. They knew you were special. They knew you had a way with words. So let me hook you up with somebody. Let me hook you up with my boy here, my boy here. Somebody hooked me up with an African cat. We had a language barrier, and he was my DJ. And I asked him if he had an 808, and he said, "Yeah, I got that and a 909." But he didn't know what I was talking about. I went to his crib. All he had was a box like LL. You know, he had a microphone in a box like LL. But he told me, you know, and
I got you, bro.
not him, but my second DJ, man, DJ Smooth. I want to get him on the show. Your cat was incredible. I'm talking about on the tables from the South, but he was incredible, man. But you go through his crates. He had East Coast stuff, down South. He had independent stuff from the South. He had stuff you never heard of. But that cat, he used to be able to go. So that's what I did. I looked for a DJ first and foremost before I did anything. And it's like, I mean, what else can I say about my credentials? You know, my credentials as an MC, my credentials of being from the South, being where I'm from. You know what I'm saying? And as far as, you know, like making the decisions that I made in life, I had to give up music at a certain time. After I got married, I was maybe 24, 25.
You didn't give it up.
You're right. I didn't give it up.
You had a different set of priorities in your life.
Yeah.
And, you know, you wanted to focus on the thing that you live with every single day. This is always going to be something that you go back to. It's never going to disappear. You know, it's not something that you're ever going to discard out of your life.
Yeah.
You know, but you took on something new in your life. You know what I mean? So
exactly. And I think it was time. It was time for me to, you know, I was in the studio with my daughter. I was recording a demo, and I was in the studio with my daughter was with me, and she was maybe 2 years old, and she was real sick. I was in the studio. My wife was at work at one evening, and my daughter's in the studio. She was real sick, and I laid her down, and she was feeling so bad. She got off the sofa and laid on the floor of the studio, and I had to look back at her, and I said, "Man, I'm done. I'm done. I can't. You know what I'm saying? I gotta raise the baby, raise the young one." So I think at that point I kind of gave up. Rap at that time, and after I ain't wrote a rhyme, and
you should.
I know. I've been doing it since then. I started
again. I was
again.
saying, man, just write it. Like, even if it's your own expression, it's not like anybody ever has to hear it. You got to put it out.
Oh, it's in here, believe me.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
It's in here, please.
Like, it's just like me on the way home every day.
Yeah.
That's what I do in my car.
Yeah.
People look at me crazy, you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, I told you I've been listening to a lot of Brick, Ohio.
Yeah.
Confunction.
Yeah.
A bunch of stuff lately because I want to see where everything that I like now, where it comes from. And you know what's funny about that? You can go back infinitely. I can go back and look who their musical inspirations were.
Yeah.
You know, I can look at an artist today, and then through my own research, go back and connect dots, you know, probably back to the 1800s if I really wanted to. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I think that's what's beautiful about it.
Yeah.
I really do.
And like we were saying earlier, man, the art of it is the beauty of what this is. People can't handle. I know a lot of people say they can't handle the cussing, the explicit lyrics. I think that's if you have.
It's only bad because somebody said it's bad.
Right.
You know.
Right. And you know, when you're looking at this art, I've been able to pick out stuff throughout my lifetime. I've had my favorite quotes, my favorite albums, my favorite producers, my favorite rappers from the East Coast, but all right, I'm gonna tell you like this. I think maybe 2015 is when I started really getting back into listening to hip hop. All these albums that I missed out on, a lot of Ghostface. I remember, man, I started listening to a lot of Ghost. Ghost got a lot of in his catalog, a lot of Ghostface stuff. Right. I started listening to a lot of the East Coast stuff. Went back into the Nas. Went back into all the stuff that I missed. I spent 2 years ago. It was Mobb Deep. It was nothing but Mobb Deep. That's when I became a big fan. Started looking at Prodigy, Havoc, you know, it was always dope, but I started paying attention to Prodigy. His voice, his everything about Mobb Deep. But I think maybe the last 8, 9 months, I got on the South,
I like the
and
South.
I'm stuck on it.
That's all I've ever known. That's why. You know?
Man, yeah, I'm stuck on it, and and that's what this whole episode is about. About, does a subconscious Southern bias still exist in hip hop? Because you read comments, you see stuff going on. Because when you see people bring up the fact of, no, it's all subjective. You can have your your subjectivity or whatever. But when you see different lists and it's multiple choices,
Who's better?
who's better, and this is like nobody from this. You mean nobody was making quality music in the South? Nobody. The source would write up. No, let me. They would write up the articles and have the cliches, the Southern fried funk, and the Southern this, and that, and makes me want to be outside sipping a lemonade, eating fried chicken while I listen to stuff. I'm like, come on, man, give some credit where credit is due.
Shit, even if that's what you were doing, it's still the experience, and it was still being translated through the medium of music.
Right. You know who some people consider the greatest hip hop producer of all time? Premier. Premier's from Houston. You know what I'm saying? I'm just, man. But I was looking at certain hooks, certain tracks, lyrical quotables. What's some of your favorites from down bottom?
Oh man, that's a really loaded question for me right now.
But you the lyric man. You broke down Foxy Brown's verse on on affirmative action.
There really is too many, man. It's anything that I could think of. There's several CeeLo lyrics that I really like.
CeeLo?
I do, man, because he's got and I'm trying to remember the song off the top of my head right now, but he's talking about an experience he has when somebody's trying to rob him for his car, and he's saying, I value your life.
Yeah.
More than I value this car. So if it means that much to you, then take it.
Take it, yeah.
Stuff like that. Anything that's inherently positive that makes you feel good. Oh gosh, man.
I mean to cut you off, but it's one song that it hits me. I knew it when it was out. I listened, I didn't. It was out, but now I appreciate it so much more because when I hear it, I'm like, damn, who produced this? Sitting Sideways at Paul Wall. That shit is ridiculous. Who produced that, man? He had to be from. That's a mad genius. Produced Sitting Sideways. It hit me one day. I'm like, damn, it was getting my bones was like, damn. That Houston sound is ridiculous, man. I love the vast differences in the sound from the South because it's a vast geographical area, and that people classify the South as the same. But you have all these localities, and the music, it might be all from the South, but it's different from the different cultures. Like I said earlier, your art is inspired by the culture you're from. And that New Orleans sound is so dope. New Orleans got a way of sitting on top of that beat.
It's like smooth crunk music.
Nah.
You don't think so?
I wouldn't quit. Yeah, nah. And I'm gonna tell you about I want to bring this up on the next episode.
I do. There's so many.
Next episode, we're gonna do part 2 of this, and we're gonna go more into the bias of it. But we just laying history right now in the South, and man, Houston got that different culture, different cities. That Houston got that car culture, that drink, that everything, that screw culture, man. Houston, and then you got New Orleans got that. And I sat down and I talked to. There was an artist. My brother went to high school with Bust Down. He was in my documentary also. I sat with. We talked in Houston. I met him in Houston, and we talked for hours. But off camera, we talked for about another 4 hours. I got so much stuff off camera, and we talked about really musical theories. And he went in about New Orleans and how the Mardi Gras Indians, the Indian chants, the chants influenced the cadence of New Orleans. And if you don't know anything about Mardi Gras, the Indians in New Orleans, you had to study the culture of how the Indians, the Native Americans, and the slaves interacted. And how the chant and how the black population in New Orleans took on that and it just through the generations. That's why the cadence sounds like it does when you listen to a Hot Boy, listen to BG, that flow and Juvie and that voice. Them cadences come from, man. And you got that, and then you got Atlanta. You got the bass guitars, organized noise. You got that flow.
True music influence.
And Big Boy, over the last 2 years, has become one of my favorite MCs. And I hate that all these years I overlooked him. Big Boy, we can't sit here and act like Boomerverse doesn't exist.
He's been promoting it for years.
One of the dopest albums, man. It just sound every track on there. We can't act like stuff like that don't exist. We can't act like the God Box, David Banner. We can't act like it don't exist. You know what I'm saying? It just gets so overlooked. We can't act like put some fire on the ass end of that weed, because in the SWATs, red hots don't drip or bleed. You can't act like that stuff. Listen to that hook. Touch what I never touched before, seen what I never seen before. Woke up and seen the sun, sky high. Sky. I've been in it for the past few days. You know that
Dude,
Black Ice.
Yeah, Black Ice.
You know what I'm saying?
That whole album you can put on play,
Yeah.
and just that's it. And
Yeah.
same, you know, probably for a lot of people, but same for ATLiens for me.
Yeah.
And we were talking about lyrics, and I was trying to remember word for word the lyrics, but 13th Floor is one of my favorite songs.
13th floor. Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah.
It brings a reality that I think anybody in the world can relate to, whether you are a part of a specific Southern culture or not.
Yeah.
You know, I think that if you listen to Dre and Big in that song, he says, "I'm speaking about you, phony, playing with that phony stuff you sharing in your Mercedes, in your raps, Mercedes Benz, and all your riches. You thinking you got it, but get it, but you ain't pimping no bitches."
Right.
You know, when I hear shit like that, I'm like, you know, what he's saying, and he's saying like you can do something on Friday night and then Saturday night, and it's the same for years and years, but you're gonna grow old from it. You know, he
yeah.
says there's another one that's sounds of laughter and happiness turns my teardrops to rain. Been bearing this burden for too many of my days, looking like breezes of autumn done finally blew my way. You know, and he's saying these things, meaning, you know, you fall into this trap of wanting these things that are not good for you. You're
Right.
not acknowledging the balance. So later on in life, you can say, you know, fat titties turn to teardrops as fat ass turns to flab. Sores that was open wounds eventually turn to scab. Trees bright and green turn yellow brown. Autumn called them. See all them leaves must fall down.
Damn.
Growing old. Like that's deep to me because, you know, it goes with everything else they're saying in the song is, you know, you're gonna grow old. You know, just like you said last week, you're not 22 no more.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and you know, certain things are gonna get old and certain things are not good for you.
Right.
But enjoy them for what they are now.
Exactly.
But realize that you can't do this for every single Friday and Saturday night
Right.
of the rest of your life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
find that balance. You get older, you figure it out. You know, don't be stuck.
What about 1 to the 2, the 3, the 4?
Oh,
them dirty red dogs done hit the door, and they got everybody on their hands and knees.
and they ain't gonna stop until they ain't gonna leave until they, you know, find the cheese, right?
Something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Man,
yeah.
Dirty Ben, Bill Clinton
Fronted me some weight, told me keep 2, bring him back 8, and I only brought him 5 and stuck his ass with 3. Yeah.
What about? I got Bobby by the pound. Yeah, man,
Whitney
come
by
on.
the key.
DJ Screw by the gallon. Bitch, the game belongs to me.
Yeah.
I got Bobby by the pound, Whitney by the key.
Weed and coke.
Man,
It's got to be I-10 again, right?
come on, man. Them hooks, we can't act like this stuff don't, man. It's just, we can't act like this stuff don't exist. Like I said, Sitting Sideways. You want to hear some tight tracks that Sitting Sideways? Listen to Mia X, Mama's Family. Listen to that. They ripped it. 8 Ball's debut solo album featuring Goody Mob, Backyard, Mississippi. Check that one out. Break 'em Off something. The cymbals.
Oh, Pete.
The cymbals that Pimp C used on the and it, man, and like I always tell you, that Cain and Abel, Gangstafied. Listen to that piano, Moby Dick on the hook and the piano. I turned that on one day and I couldn't even hear the lyrics because the piano had me. My ears are fixed on the piano the whole song.
That weird chord progression where you're like, does that belong there? But it does somehow. It's like that jazz theory, like da-da-da, da-da-da, do-do-do, whatever it is. It makes you think, how do you make that work?
Yeah.
Somebody makes it work. That's what we talk about
Yeah.
is the magic of producers, you know, not being beat makers, but a producer.
A
making
producer,
something. That
yeah.
ebb and flow
Yeah.
of making things like jazz, like John Coltrane, you know, the things that you can mash together.
Yeah.
And normally doesn't really work by itself, but you add one element somewhere in there and it all sticks it together. It creates that glue.
Like you just said, not just a beat maker, but a producer. And you look at the work of the same song, Gangstafied, that Moby Dick produced, the arrangement, once again, a step higher than a beat maker. That the arrangement in that song, man, is just ridiculous. Everything was placed exactly where it should be. And I said it's my opinion, man, that's one of the most perfectly produced rap songs ever. In my,
You said that.
I've said it, and
said
I
that.
stand, and I listened to it half of the day yesterday, and I stand by that. That's what I listen for now. We used to listen to who had the dirtiest, grittiest, nastiest samples and where they got them from. But I hear that music now, man. The pianos, the boom, the guitar. Like you named some instrument to me the other day. We were talking about a bass guitar. I forgot what song.
Or
it
I
was.
think it's an effect like a slap. I like the sound of a slap and a pop. And
That's
a
what we're
bass.
talking about. Yeah.
Like I like when you can hear like on a good Warwick on a chord you hit it with your thumb and it just reverberates in a manner that you just don't hear the low. It's kind of like you hear the high part high part of that frequency as it's going out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You just said the key word right there. That's what I was looking for earlier when I talked about what producers are. Alchemists of our generation. They built the soundtrack of our lives, and they resonate at that higher vibratory frequency.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
understand that. They understand in the DJs too. If I play this, oh, they gonna get on the dance. You know, if I hit it right here, hit this right, this gonna make him do that right. And I gotta give them. We're gonna do a show on producers.
That's a big order.
Yeah,
Big order.
I like producers more than I like rappers. You know what I'm saying? Rappers will leave you stranded. Rappers will confirm they'll meet you somewhere and never show up. Producers are the cats I like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Rappers do that dumb shit. You know what I'm saying? But
like
you
that.
know what I'm saying? A shout out to everybody. This is the Genius Generation Podcast. I'm your host, the Professor, and I'm with
Sal Gravy, man.
an engineer extraordinaire, Fran Lover. And this is the Genius Generation Podcast. And we thank you for being with us. And we hope that you come back. We're going to do part 2. And we'll go more into the subconscious bias that still exists in hip-hop against the South and the Southern sound. So this is the Professor. And remember, you'll never know the weight this culture carries until you live this life.
Word.
And we are out.
Holla.